FAVMI presents Unfolding Mental Illness, hosted by Saraswati Suresh.
Welcome to the 14th episode of Unfolding Mental Illness. I am Saraswati Suresh, the founder of FAVMI, which is also the regional chapter of Face Me India. And my co-host is Dr. Sachin Ganolkar, the founder member and director of FAVMI. Today we have a very interesting and important and an overlooked topic. The topic is managing the workplace with mental illness and lived experience. Mental health challenges affect millions of people worldwide. Yet, in the workplace, when it comes to the workplace, people are struggling to talk about it openly. How can we balance the pressures of corporate life with the need to take care of our own mental well-being? At the same time, how can we help our loved ones feel supported and not stigmatized for living with mental illness? To help us unpack these questions, we are honored to have a guest with a unique perspective. He is a graduate and postgraduate out of the two prestigious universities of our country, IIT Kharagpur and IIM Ahmedabad. And he built a successful career in the corporate world, all while managing the complexities of his mental illness. His journey offers a wealth of insights, not only to the pressures of the high performance work environment, but also into how mental illness can coexist with success, resilience, and personal growth. Let's hear firsthand from him the challenges he faced, the support systems that helped him, and what changes he believes are needed to support our loved ones in the workplace today. Our guest for this episode is Sumit Guha. Sumit Guha is also in the working committee of Face Me and is working very closely with Dr. Nirmala Srinivasan and is all geared to take it to new heights. Welcome for this episode, Sumit, and we are totally honored and for agreeing to be part of this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saraswati and Sachin, for inviting me to this interview. I think it's a great honor to be and a privilege to be called for this interview and to speak about mental illness in the workplace, which definitely in my case was a major problem. And ready to talk about it as you deem fit.
Sure. So let's begin. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's set the context first. Can you please share in brief your journey on mental illness to start with?
Well, to begin with, I never could have imagined that I had mental illness because right up to the age of 30, there were no signs of mental illness. I was doing very well in college and I used to actively participate in sports and games and cultural activities. And I think there are a lot of expectations of me. And this came suddenly, kind of out of the blue, and even when it came, nobody had an idea that this could be mental illness. So, I mean, the kind of things that I did during my course at work and at home, when I first had this round of mental illness, characterized by cognitive impairment and low energy, basically I would go to various gods and goddesses and alternate therapy healers like Reiki and all kinds of things to see if the problem could be solved. And it was only about 4 or 5 months after this started that my parents and wife thought that maybe you should see a psychiatrist. And we then saw a psychiatrist in Calcutta. who said that this is some form of depression, and it could be because of biochemical imbalances in the brain, or basically he said that your defense mechanisms against stress are low, and therefore you have got this problem. So, one can't blame it on anything very clearly. It can't be blamed on the workplace or on the individual. Although there was definitely a fair amount of stress that happened at that point of time. And in every case of episode of mental illness that has happened, it's always been preceded or triggered by some stressful event, not pertaining to workplace or performance stress, but some kind of a stressful event that happened. So that's how it started. I had 3 episodes of stress, workplace mental illness, and the third one was the last one, which was probably the worst, and it showed the kind of things that can happen during mental illness. And I actually had to leave the workplace at that. So that's my journey through uh, workplace stress and mental illness, uh, and I'm happy to talk about it uh, further.
So, what have you now been finally diagnosed with?
Well, initially, when I was diagnosed, it was basically depression.
Mm-hmm.
And within a year after that, I left that job and I came to Bangalore,
Mm-hmm.
and I got probably better treatment in one of the most renowned mental health institutions in India.
Correct.
And the doctor there added a new concept. First time I had heard about it, called psychotic depression, which means that there were kind of delusions of reference, where
Hmm.
I thought that people were talking about me, and paranoid delusions, where I thought that people were out to get me. And so he started treating me for both psychotic delusions and depression. And in the last round, slowly the diagnosis moved to schizophrenia spectrum disorder. And one doctor even said that I may have had a case of mania in bipolar disorder. So I don't think the diagnosis in these psychiatric illnesses is so straightforward, in the sense that uh, many different people had different diagnoses. I went to quite a few doctors, and while the diagnoses are different, the treatment is the same, as the same medicines that are given. So one doesn't feel that the doctors are too concerned about the diagnosis,
Hmm.
in the sense that somebody said it's schizoaffective disorder, somebody said that it's schizophrenia spectrum disorder, somebody said that it's psychotic depression. And so different doctors from good institutions diagnosed it differently. But every time the medicine was all the same. It was basically for depression and for psychosis. And to some extent, there were some medicines for bipolar as well.
Okay.
I think the main problems that I faced in the workplace while I was having these episodes is, while it's not talked about too much in schizophrenia or psychosis, uh, the delusions are an important factor and a distinguishing factor in having psychosis. But the most important factor in the workplace is cognitive impairment,
Hmm.
because at that point of time, with cognitive impairment, you're not able to think at all. So you're not able to perform your job functions at all. So, for example, my job entailed reading a lot about lease agreements and
Hmm.
documentation, and I couldn't read anything because there was no concentration and no attention. And so even when it came to signing bills of the project works that I was doing, it was only based on the accountant, trusting the accountant to produce something that is mm, proper, that I would sign the bills. I mean, the accountant would come in front of me and give me the bill, and I would just sign it. I don't know. I don't know at that point of time whether the accountant realized that I was signing blindly,
Hmm.
but it was a major issue. So during the episodes, I had these major problems, but very strangely, I came out of those episodes in a period of about 2 years, except the last round, and I began performing perfectly well. I can't give any reason for coming out of the episodes except for the fact that sometimes there were positive triggers and sometimes there were it was just a matter of time that it I just gave it time and it happened. I mean, I didn't do anything special. I didn't take any medication because all the doctors told me there's no medication for cognitive impairment. I did try at one time some cognitive remediation theory uh, practice, but I don't think that made much of a difference.
Okay. So one of the biggest chapters which we families face is acceptance by the the loved one. How did how easy for you it was to accept that yes, I'm having a challenge and I need to go to a psychiatrist.
See, the thing is, I tried all kinds of things. As I told you, that we went to
Correct.
healing therapists and all kinds of people,
Hmm.
and then the psychiatrist gave me a plausible reason. And although I didn't like accepting the fact that I was mentally ill, I had to accept it because I couldn't do anything about it. My energy was very low. When I used to try to exercise in the morning, I could hardly get up and go out for exercise. And so I had to acknowledge that something was wrong.
Okay.
And I didn't know whether medications could cure it, but that was the only possible uh, saving grace at that point of time. So I had to accept and I took the medicines. And that happened the first time around. And in the second and third episode, I myself felt that I was having a relapse because the doctors had told me that there are strong possibilities of a relapse in this illness. And as almost as soon as it happened, I went straight to the doctor. And while they gave me medicines, I'm not sure if the medicines, I mean, you can't make out whether the medicines are working or not working. You don't feel any difference. And sometimes the side effects of the medicine, like antipsychotics, psychotics are basically, they're not originally psychotics, they are tranquilizers. They started their journey as medications for psychosis as tranquilizers. So they operate as tranquilizers and they prevent you from thinking very clearly and thinking very creatively. So all these things also affect your uh, performance in the workplace.
Hmm.
And so I had to accept it because there's no other choice. Uh, but definitely, psychotics, while they tranquilize you, they also suppress your delusional thinking.
Hmm.
So, to that extent, they are quite useful. But uh, I don't know if there's any other way to come out of this kind of a problem.
Hmm.
But definitely, family support and the fact that I had a fair amount of financial backing towards the end when I left the job made a big difference as it reduced the anxiety and the stress that precipitate this illness further. So it didn't get worse for sure.
So you mentioned about in your workplace, one was the what was affecting your performance, one was cognitive impairment, concentration. Uh, what else were the what else was affecting in your personal experience in your workplace for your performance?
I think low energy is a very important thing because when you are leading in a workplace, you need to have energy to motivate your staff and the executives working for you. And if you have low energy and your speed of thinking has slowed down, then other people understand that situation very quickly, and then they themselves get demotivated. Like in one of my assignments, uh, I had low energy and I wasn't able to think very fast, and I wasn't able to produce very creatively compared to the others who were on the job. And slowly, the department that I ran also became very small as people kept quitting because I couldn't motivate them. And you need to be in very good spirits at least I think in all kinds of workplaces to motivate people to work for you, and you need to come up with good ideas and good thoughts and creative ideas. And if you're doing a job that involves analysis, then deeper analysis, and throw up challenges to people in the workplace. But if you yourself are challenged and you're not able to throw up these challenges, then it becomes very difficult to handle a job that requires leadership skills. Most good leaders are good, effective communicators, and the communication skills that go down in this function uh, with your illness becomes a major problem in doing a job. I mean, it might be possible to do a job that doesn't involve much uh, energy and is a kind of sit at home job and just do your mental work. But that was not the kind of role that I had. So that was a major problem. Low energy, low motivation, inability to motivate staff, and all those kind of things. And the fact that you can't read itself is a very demotivating factor in while working, because if you can't read, you can't do anything. I mean, all of us are used to being able to read and being able to communicate, and so uh, that is a major factor in this kind of a job. I understand all mental illnesses don't involve severe cognitive impairment, uh, and but in my case, it did, and it was a major problem.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, comprehension becomes, to be able to comprehend what you're reading, it becomes difficult, then it becomes difficult to continue to work.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had good bosses. I mean, the leader of the company um, managed to keep me, uh, and he communicated to the bosses that he has a problem, so let him be. So, uh, in both cases, most of the people in the company left me alone, and hardly anybody talked about this kind of a problem. And nobody pushed me into doing something that I couldn't do. And so I think, yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah. In fact, that was my next question, what was the support you got from your bosses and colleagues and, people around your workplace?
I think, like I said, the leadership made a big difference. In the case of the first company where I had this episode, uh, the leadership was very positively inclined because I had done a good job in uh, earlier activities when I was well. And even in the second job, uh, the leadership played an important role in making sure that I wasn't disturbed or harassed, or that if I shifted companies, the managing director of that company would be told that uh, mm, make sure that he isn't push too hard, he's having a problem, but hopefully he'll recover, which was very positive, I think, because all my colleagues would have found it a little difficult to communicate with me. And I'm sure that, especially since I was thrust onto them at a senior position, there would have been some kind of envy and jealousy, although nobody showed it openly, uh, but it was quashed by the leadership of the company. And even towards the end of the my career at the company, uh, when I was asked to leave, uh, the top man in the company uh, said, "No, you shouldn't leave because you're an asset to the group and you should stay on." And he tried to find other roles, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
if
sorry, continue. Continue.
no, I was saying that leadership definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It once the leader is committed, then the bosses also get committed, and the colleagues also fall in line. And the thing is, how long can people continue like this? I really have no answer to that because it depends on how long the leadership is willing to support you. I mean, in my second episode, I went up to the leadership many times and told them that if you want me to resign, I'm happy to resign because I'm not able to do the job. But they never agreed. They said that many competent people, well known people have had mental health problems and you need to uh, take that into account and do whatever you can. And I think nobody knew anything about mental illness, and people rarely know much about the mental illness. All he knew was that I was taking medicines. So he would ask, "Are you taking your medicines regularly?" So that's about it, without knowing much about the different kinds of mental illnesses that can strike in the workplace.
Yeah. It's good to have such kind of leaders in the corporate world who are ready to support our loved ones in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. So, but besides the leader, did you face any stigma besides that in the workplace? And how did you address them?
See, the thing about stigma is that nobody ever mentioned the mental illness to me in my stint in the workplace, except maybe once or twice. Uh, and but I'm sure that people knew about that I was having some kind of a problem, but they never asked me what kind of a problem or tried to probe into what kind of illness I have. Uh, and that in itself is a little strange because you
Yeah.
feel a little odd if you're not, if nobody talks about it. I think that is a stigma in itself because people are not willing to talk about it. And even within friends and family, uh, hardly anybody ever talked about, except the immediate family, hardly anybody talked about this problem. Most people are not willing to say anything to you about it, and they see that you are completely different from what you used to be, and possibly some people who are in your favor hope that it'll get better automatically. And most people don't know how to handle it, and therefore they don't know what to say to you. And so, in fact, I have been quite vocal about it, the issues that I'm facing now, because I think that it's important that people know what actually happens to people who are having these illnesses. And while no illness is necessarily the same, it's kind of important to at least understand what the person is going through so that he's not sort of just written off as having a problem or is lazy or is deficient in some kind of way. Even among my friends, uh, I I I don't know whether people are aware, and they're not much in touch with me. So, except for a very few close friends, hardly anybody talked about this. And so, I'm not much in touch with some friends, many friends actually. And so, it's not so easy to keep up friendship when they see you as a completely changed personality. And so, I think they are also embarrassed because they don't know exactly what to say. And so, these kind of things probably form some kind of a stigma, and probably uh, people who don't know you so well but are still part of your circle avoid you because they don't want to have that kind of an interaction which is embarrassing to both parties. So I'm learning to live with that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's very strange, that people find it difficult to have a conversation of the, and I think probably we need a lot more of education and awareness of how to talk to such people. I mean, there's nothing different, I think. Why do we make it such a big issue, saying that, yes, we need to talk to them differently? So it's something I don't get it, but yes, that's reality, unfortunately. Yeah, I understand, how it is to you. Moving
Mm.
on to a very different subject is like, how do you think is mental uh, health in the workplace and mental illness in the workplace? How are these two different? And what are the approaches to both of them?
Uh, this is only my view.
Mm-hmm.
I think mental health in the workplace is uh, more an issue of common mental disorders like depression or anxiety, and they're usually short term and don't last for too long, and it's possible to get out of them. But severe mental illness like bipolar or schizophrenia can last indefinitely, and so those have to be treated differently in the workplace. And I don't know what is the right solution. For example, if you have severe mental illness like schizophrenia and you have cognitive impairment, then I'm not sure how exactly the workplace can handle that kind of an illness, except for posting you in a position that doesn't require too much thinking, and not in a senior management position because you can't handle it. While in mental health, a slight uh, 2 week or 3 week gap in your illness, in your mental health, which doesn't affect your cognitive abilities, uh, is much easier handled and is a much easier subject in the workplace to handle than mental illness. Mental illness, uh, I mean, you see, the thing is that you don't know for how long a corporate can keep a mentally ill person in the job because he may recover. I mean, now there is a case in which one country has said that, I think it's India itself, there's a law that if you've got an episodic mental illness, you need to be uh, kept in the workplace because your illness is coming in episodes, coming and going in episodes. So it should be treated as long term positive, and your the positivity of your uh, environment will help you recover from that episode and come back to working as normal. So you should be treated as normal.
Hmm.
So I don't know how many corporates can do that. the corporate that I worked in did it for 4 years, which is quite a long time, in 2 episodes. Um, but mental illness, even if you browse the internet, mental illness has a different kind of approach to be looked at by corporates than mental health.
Hmm.
And mental health is probably what can be approached quite easily. Uh, that's what people are doing right now. Mostly people talk about mental health in the workplace and not mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
They're also talking of mental well-being.
yeah.
Yeah.
See, the thing is that I'm myself not fully sure whether mental well-being and mental health, etc., can be handled by external departments in the organization. I mean, in my case, uh, I think if the organization was functioning perfectly normally and everything was running well, without the need for an intervention of a mental health group, uh, then there is no need to have a mental health group to ensure that people's mental health is good, because there is no major stress in the organization. But it is the things that go wrong in the operations of the organization that cause stress and cause mental health problems. So I'm not sure how a mental health group can prevent that from happening. Except it's a bit like an HR department
Correct.
has a limited role to play in making sure that the operations of the organization function properly.
Hmm.
Uh, so maybe mental health can form a part of the diversity and inclusion groups in organization, and if organizations take care of these groups very well, then maybe that can be part of that can be mental health can be introduced as a function in those kind of organizations.
Yeah.
The organization itself has to be receptive to an external arm trying to force better practices in operations.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's the need of the hour, with uh, the recent, so many, we hear of so many youth, committing suicides because of the stress in the work environment. I think there is a need for the corporates to relook at, how they can bring about mental well-being in the system. In fact, the recent Deloitte report of the Gen Z and Millennium also talk about how, you know, the percentages are quite high where they're saying the stress in the work environment, the youth
Right.
is saying. Yeah. So definitely. So what would be your advice to those who are struggling with, in their workplace and have uh, some kind of mental illness? What would be your advice to them?
I would say that give up and never leave the job voluntarily
Hmm.
unless there is absolutely no way you can keep it up. And even every daily stressful uh, visit to the office keeps you keeps your place as a reminder to stay focused in the work. And the easy way out is to uh, stop going to office and not participating in office activities. But the workplace, not having a workplace is probably more stressful than having a workplace, in the sense that uh, if you can find some other job within the same organization that can keep you happier, you might take it. But don't give up just because uh, you're finding it stressful to be in the workplace. I think just the fact that you're in the workplace and you're interacting with other people and you have a circle to, routine to keep to. All these things make a substantial difference to your recovery path. And if you are focused on recovery, then the best way to do it, I think, in my case, was to stay in the workplace. So it was quite a trauma for me when I got out of the workplace and I was left with no job, although I was reasonably old at that point of time. But still, 8 years without a job has been quite a stressful state. And uh, I guess there was no other choice as I was not able to do the job at all. But I would say that the most important thing is to try to stay in the job, even if you're not performing. Try to make some friends who help you through your time that you are in the workplace, and try to make good with your bosses so that they support you during your state of mental illness.
That's a lovely message, Sumit, because I think, yes, the road to recovery, one of the, everybody says is that keep a routine and go to work. And, if people can continue their jobs, I think it will be the best process.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And how do you think co-workers can be more supportive and understanding in the workplace?
I think that depends on the kind of role that you have. If you are a boss of your co-workers, then it's a bit of a problem because you don't really motivate them substantially. But and the co-workers probably feel envious of your position because you're not functional, but you're still in a position of leadership, so they have to take care of you. But I was fortunate in most of my environments. When I became non-functional, the teams picked up the slack and they took care of the job. I mean, you'll be surprised corporates, they have such a large team that even if you are totally non-functional, the teams can do the job very well because they are kind of groomed to take over from you. I mean, the whole system is such that you have people who are groomed to become your successors without any difficulty. So if you train them well enough to become your replacement, then they can easily do your job while you're in a non-functional position. So if your co-workers are not highly competitive and don't follow a dog eat dog policy, then you'll find that work is getting along quite smoothly, and people um, think that you are doing quite okay because you can communicate reasonably even though you are cognitively impaired. So then the amount of slack that your bosses and your colleagues around you are willing to cut you is quite significant compared to what you could have been. And so I would say it all depends on the environment of the company. The environment in the company is not a cutthroat environment, then I think co-workers are also quite useful. I had reasonably good friends uh, at all the positions that I was when I was non-functional. And later I learned that they all knew that I was having some issues, but they didn't talk about it because they didn't know what the issue was.
True. So I think, yeah, it makes a lot. I think workers, co-workers, etc., understand and they're willing to help in today's environment.
Yeah, I mean, people are there. Most people are there just to do their job.
Correct.
So if they just do their job, then the function operates. Everything operates functionally.
True.
Then they don't feel that.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't say anything about the fact that
Correct.
they are being led by somebody with a mental illness.
Yeah. True. I'll now hand it over to Dr. Sachin to take over further.
Yeah, thank you, Saraswati. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Guha, for sharing your journey. I think it's quite brave of you to share your journey and the ups and downs of your career, while also addressing mental health and the illness at the same place. And thank you for trusting us. I think it requires immense strength to actually share with what you have gone and with the family team and the audience who's listening to this podcast. And we really appreciate for the kind of maybe fortitude or equally vulnerability you have shown when you're dealing with this. So just to continue with questions what Saraswati was asking, uh, apart from co-workers, what is the role of senior leadership in an organization supporting people with mental illness?
I think, I think the role of senior leadership is paramount, just as it is in the case of uh, any other function, because without the support of senior leadership, uh, nobody is going to uh, accept somebody with mental illness and obvious performance deficiencies running or partly running an organization. Uh, like I said, in all my cases, the senior leadership was very supportive, and they probably, I don't know for sure, but they probably advised the management that this guy has a problem, so just bear with him for some time, because when he returns to work as normal, he is in pretty, he makes quite a difference to the organization. Probably, I'm not sure. But otherwise, I can't understand why nobody told me anything. And in fact, in most cases, people felt, or people, when they told me that we don't see any difference, we see you performing a normal job, which I am sure that I wasn't. So they were just being kind. So senior leadership is key to, as it is in any new initiative, like even things like diversity, inclusion, where you're bringing in people who are different and creating some impact in the organization. Senior leadership is the most important, and that value has to translate through senior leadership. And if in my case, senior leadership didn't believe it, then as I gave them an option to for me to resign so many times, but they refused, and they said that you should uh, last it out till you return to normal, because I think maybe they also knew that if you stay within the organization, you are having a chance to interact with people and stimulate your intellect, and you need that chance to stimulate your intellect to and keep in touch with the rest of your working colleagues, and that's a kind of society for you to keep your brain sharp and running.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Goa. I think that was a very good sharing that I've seen. You were very blessed to have people who actually were compassionate, and it really makes a difference. The next question would be what should a corporate do? Managing people with mental illness in the workplace can be quite a challenge, since, as you discussed, mental illness creates some kind of cognitive impairment, making it difficult to function them in the workplace in episodes. The illness is episodic. The challenge facing the company is how long does the company wait for the individual to return to normal?
I think this is a serious challenge because uh, the periods of episodes, at least in my case, have been quite long. 2 years and 2 years for the second episode, and almost 8 years for the third episode. So uh, it's easy to say that the organization should find some kind of a steady job with less pulls and pushes and stresses and strains to keep you within the organization. But how long is the key question. Not many people or not many organizations will take 2 years as a period uh, and as a length of time to keep an keep a executive in the organization if he is not fully functional. Uh, so I don't know the answer to the question. In my case, they agreed to hold on for 2 years and 2 years. And I think it served them well because the years that I came out of this problem, uh, I performed fairly well, and the uh, cognitive parts were in very good condition. But when it lasts for long, then it's really up to the organization. I don't think termination is the issue, uh, because termination is neither good for the organization nor is it good for the individual. So possibly some kind of interim job that the person stays within the organization and keeps his friends and conversations going is important. But I don't know how many organizations in India will manage that. I mean, the organization I was in was pretty forward thinking in keeping me for such a long time. And hopefully, when I came back, it served them well. But there are certain things like when you have delusions and you are talking some funny stuff, you're probably ending up confusing the people in the organization. Like in my case, uh, in the last episode, I had delusions where I thought that people in the organization are talking about me. And so I used to reply back to them thinking that they're talking about me. And the replies, when I now see, are totally irrelevant. But so that must have confused the people in the organization as well. But they continued with me. So, of course, the delusions that I had percolated down to the rest of the staff only in the last episode. And it was in the last episode that uh, the organization decided that I should resign from the job. And that could be because of these delusions, I'm not sure. The thing is that delusions are little easier to deal with than cognitive impairment, because in cognitive impairment, you're not doing anything, you're actually not reading anything, you're not paying any attention, you're not concentrating. So the deficiency becomes much more clear than delusion, where you're cognitively okay, but you're deluded into thinking different things. So I think if you don't express those delusions, then it's easier for the corporate to accept you because you're not talking about them. So I used to try to keep quiet about those things, but sometimes it's not that easy because that's all that you're thinking.
Wonderful. I think that was very candid, and I think you have rightly dissected through what was going on and what caused the problem and what has not, what can be tolerated. Going to the next question, what is reasonable accommodation in the workplace?
That is another issue. Under the government law, when you're hiring people, you're supposed to create a reasonable accommodation for them, for the mentally ill, for example, or disabled, basically. The thing is that what is the definition of reasonable accommodation? It might vary from organization to organization, and the organizations determine what is reasonable accommodation. And in the case of mentally ill, in UK there is a rule that you have to, if you have spent 2 years in the organization undergoing continuous employment and done a reasonable job, then the organization has to aid you by finding you some kind of a reasonable accommodation to continue to ensure continuity of your job. So when you have worked in an organization for some time, then shouldn't is it the organization's responsibility to find some role for you to keep you employed until you are back to normal functioning? So I would say, as per that law, there is some responsibility of the organizations to try to keep you employed, uh, and there's some responsibility of the organizations to ensure that you remain in employment if you can't handle the job that you're doing currently, then and to uh, find some other accommodation within the organization if it's a large organization that can take care of you while you are ill until you recover. So the definition of reasonable accommodation as it stands is determined by the organization. But the fact is that the law says that the organization should find some reasonable accommodation for you if you have worked in the organization for a couple of years or more. And if you are a new hire under the Disabilities Act, they should make reasonable accommodations to ensure that you can function in the job that they are providing for you. The law doesn't provide for what are those reasonable accommodations because that is entirely up to the government or the organization to figure out. But there is, under legal provisions, both for new hires and for existing employees, some provision for searching for reasonable accommodation to try to accommodate. So basically, the law encourages finding of some kind of position for you to accommodate you to work through the years that you're not well, if you can. How many organizations are doing that? I'm not very sure.
Absolutely well said. I think that's a pertinent question for all of us. So, if you have a physical problem, if you have diabetes, or if you fracture your foot, I think the company might accommodate, and you might continue working at the workplace. You might actually wear a crutch and start working. But if you have a mental illness and you require some support, I think, and that it's a very valid question and answer which you have put. Just to take it, stretch it further, and we have discussed it before. How important is it for mentally ill people to have an opportunity of staying in the workplace from the possibility of a recovery perspective?
I think it's pretty critical because staying in the workplace ensures some kind of intellectual stimulation, and that I think partly adds to the recovery process, and also provides you with social context because you have friends in the workplace who don't normally people accept you as it is and they don't normally laugh at you or make fun of you or anything like that, as some people might fear. And continuity in the workplace makes a difference because if you worked for 25 years and you work another 2 years, then you're likely to work another 6-7 years in the workplace. And those 6 years with colleagues and having a regular routine of getting up in the morning, dressing up, going to work, all that makes a difference. While it's not clear why it makes a difference, it definitely does make a difference. and you have a chance to talk to people for almost 8-9 hours a day. All that makes a difference, and so staying in the workplace does make a difference. And I would urge anybody with any mental health problem or mental illness who's considering dropping out of the workplace because the daily stress of getting up and going to work every day is too much. It's not a good idea. I don't think it's a great idea to do that. It's definitely much better to go regularly to the workplace and be present every day from many perspectives. Even, even our doctors used to tell us that, I mean, for example, the psychiatric rehabilitation services in NIMHANS offers you a program where you can go to their workplace and do a job, however kind of menial the job is. But you work with other people and you might be cutting vegetables or potting plants or engaging in computers. But they provide you an opportunity to go to the workplace and do something and keep you out of the house and attend that workplace. And I think that played a big role in my coming out of a severe situation where I was sitting at home doing nothing. Attending that psychiatric rehabilitation services made a difference, and that's how I got into Face Me because Dr. Krishna Prasad introduced me to Dr. Nirmala Srinivas, and that is giving me some kind of a job to do. And similarly, uh, I also took an opportunity to join a small startup where we tried to do something which unfortunately didn't go through. But the confidence came out of working in the PRS in not a very similar role, but meeting people and meeting uh, and having conversation. I think that makes a big difference.
I think very nice, Mr. Go. I think the kind of candid conversations and sharing which you have mentioned, and the stimulation, social connection, and a structured routine which the workplace brings, I think that's a very good feedback. And given the fact that in countries like UK, companies need to demonstrate reasonable adjustments before terminating an employee who has worked for more than 2 years continuously, your company displayed reasonable adjustment before terminating your services, even though you had 25 years of continuous service in the organization. So I think that's been a great sharing and advice. And would you like to sum up based on what Saraswati has asked from the beginning and what has been followed up later? Would you have any kind of a summary for people who are living with mental disorders? We discussed about the workplace today and how actually you could deal with it in a nutshell.
I would say that it's staying in the workplace is important because once you leave the workplace with a mental illness, it is increasingly difficult to get jobs because you're not at your best, and it's much easier to stay on at your workplace if you can, and there's definitely a therapeutic effect to staying on in the workplace. And the other thing is that while people talk a lot about stigma, it's not very clear what exactly the stigma is. Like, still calling me to talk or discuss how I am, and while a lot of friends are have probably heard from other friends that I have a problem, and they are not engaging with me, the stigma is not so overt. Uh, in the sense that when I meet people, everybody talks quite politely and There's no clear uh, discrimination that, oh, you have mental illness, there's something wrong with you. When I came first for a face me meeting, which was a government meeting to select to fill positions for government consisting mostly of disabled people, I found that one colleague who attended with me, he told me that it's very difficult to get health, mentally ill people into jobs because people, like you said, they accept people with diabetes or other physical illnesses, but mentally ill, they somehow consider as good as mad, and therefore they don't want to give them jobs. And so there is a strong resistance to giving mentally ill people jobs because they say they are mad, what can they do? So probably there is a stigma, but I haven't witnessed it as much as is talked about, except for the fact that definitely people are uncomfortable with knowing people who have mental illness and uncomfortable discussing it. Many of the articles that I've written, I have forwarded to people who are my erstwhile colleagues or friends. Some people have commented saying that they are very good. Other people have kept a stony silence, which is the silence that they kept throughout the illness. So, I think people don't know how to acknowledge it or how to say anything about it. That has to be overcome. Maybe it'll be over sometime.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Guha. I think absolutely well said. I think you have been very articulate. And the questions what Saraswati put in terms of workplace support, acceptance of mental illness, and the kind of dissection we have done, looking at what is your experience in the workplace, continuity of job, what are the benefits your workplace offers, and of course, as you rightly said, that while the intellect stays preserved, I think people feel that if you are mentally ill, I think you won't be able to perform, which is also, I think, a myth to a large extent. And we just wanted to thank you from the bottom of your heart, because you explained all these incidents plus your journey so well. And I hope people who listen to this would be inspired, and would actually, there would be a lot of change which would happen, which would support people who live with mental illness, and also families like us who are listening this podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin and Saraswati,
Thank you so
for
much.
an excellent hour-long chat.
Yeah.
I hope it was useful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so candid. There's so many takeaway points from your conversation today for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.